Hey, it's Jared from Coda. In the last video, we dropped off with kind of setting up the organization of the schema and how I like to go about organizing these things and dividing content up, as you can see here in Notion. And I said I was going to do this all off screen, but as I started to do that, I realized there's a few things that took me quite a bit of GitHub repo scouring before I figured out really what people were doing. And so I thought it might be helpful to take a step back and maybe walk through some of those things. So the hero is here. Again, like we dropped off in the last video, this stuff isn't currently actually in the studio just yet, but we're creating the schema stuff that we need so that when we create the documents, we'll have all the pieces that we need to make pages. So I'm just going to kind of work through all of this and maybe talk through what I'm doing. And so to start off, let's go ahead and work on the features. So like the other one, we're going to export a default, and this is going to need a title, and we will call it features. It needs a name, and that will also be features. It needs a type, and that type is going to be an object. Next, we can work on the fields, and this is going to be an array of objects. The first thing we need is a label. In fact, you know what? There is some of this that I can copy over from the hero. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can grab that, drop this in, format it, and that takes care of our heading, subheading. The label actually didn't make it in here, but we know we've got it. That brings us to the feature list. And this is about where I got that I realized, this array of type feature, where do you put the feature in here and some of those things. So let's figure that one out. So the way I would go about doing this is I would create a new field, and that needs all the standard stuff. So it's going to need a title, a name. And now remember, this is sort of the data's name, you could say. So I like to keep those camel cased. And that will be a type of array. And that will bring us to of. And now this is kind of a fun thing about Sanity. I think it's super logical that when you have an array, it's of, and then it's an array of objects. And it just, I don't know, to me, I barely even had to look at the docs because I was like, oh, sick. An array, make an array. It's pretty simple. So inside of that, it'll be an array of objects where you can define the types that will be accepted. And since it is an array, you can provide multiple accepted types of content. But in this one, we are just going to have a type of feature. And we haven't made feature yet, but let's go ahead and do that. And so the feature will be sort of, if you think of a plug as something that drops into a document like a page, an object is even one more step removed in my mind. So an object would be something like where you have a repeater field. Some people might call it a partial or something like that. A lot of times these will end up being images or maybe some open graph settings or something like that. But we can just drop in here that we need feature.js. And now, again, there's sort of some boilerplate we can kind of steal here. So let's just copy all of this over and then remove what we don't want. So we don't want that, and we don't want this, and I don't even think we want a label, but we at least got some of this. So this is going to have a title of feature, a name of feature, and a type of object. And so you can come through here. This is the feature list that we needed to create is right here. And then I broke down that we needed an object called feature and that it needs a heading. Done. And we could technically call this done. Even if feature isn't done, this will be there when we need it. So we have a heading. The next we need a title of body. Let's capitalize that. Title of body, a name of body, and a tag. I lied. Name body, and that's going to have type is going to be, we'll say text. Let's make sure that that is, all right, sick. Yeah, default 10 rows. That's perfect. Okay, so we have that. Let's open this back up. Have a body of text. And the next one we are going to have is a title, and that will be of tag. We will have a name, of tag, and of type. We are going to have a, how do we want to do this? I said select one of type, tag, and then we'll have a document for those tags managed elsewhere. But how do we want to do that? I think that we will say that this is a singular reference, and we will say that it is to the type of tag. So then we'll have to call this, interesting, we're going to end up with a naming conflict there with tag and tag. Didn't really think this one through, huh? So we'll say tag reference to tag. Here's what we're going to do. I actually think that in some use cases, we're probably going to want more than one tag. So let's actually call these tags, and we'll say it's a type is going to be an array. And then we will say of, give me this, and then we will have of type. We're just going to move this up. So this will be now an array of tags that will reference the type of tag. And so the reason I want to be particular about this is because I know that right now we just need to throw in some features or add some features onto, or tags, excuse me, onto these features. But once we end up with blogs and videos and other pieces of content on the site, I would need these tags to be managed in a more global way so that I can tie references to them. And initially I was thinking we'd just have the one, but we're actually in the middle of designing the blog. And as I'm thinking about it, sometimes we toss on more than one tag. And these aren't categories. That's not really how we're using them. It's more for things like new, hot, cool, just little descriptive tags, really just to get attention more than anything and draw attention mostly to new content or trending content, those sorts of things. So categories, again, will be separate, but this is something that we have in the design that we want to make sure that we accommodate for. And so now this gets, maybe a little funky because now we're thinking, okay, so we've created this feature. It's not going to work just yet. And the reason for that is, if you remember, we have to export all of these things from the index files, the way that we set this up. And so I'm going to copy this over into the objects index file. And I'm just going to replace hero with feature. And so what this is going to do is allow us to access this feature from the objects directory. And now if you remember in the last video, we have this schema where we are concatenating all of our types and creating the schema. And so if you remember what we did here, we're going to have to repeat a couple of these things. And so these will be objects from objects. And this function is going to be the same. And we'll have all objects and then we will throw that in there like that. And that's what we need to do. So now anything that we add in this objects directory, and we'll have some more, and then export from here will be automatically accessible in Sanity's schema. And so let's hop on back into the feature and let's just make sure that we got everything accounted for. We have a body, we have a tag where you're selecting, I said one. So we'll say select tags of type tag. And the document of tag needs to just be a string. We'll go ahead and take care of that. Why not? So first, let's create the index file that we need. Then we'll come in here and we will say tag.js. If we throw in here just some of this boilerplate stuff that we may need. I don't think we need these things. We don't need a label either. That doesn't sound fun for this. So we literally just need this. So it's probably overkill to copy and paste, but that's all right. So we'll have a title is going to be tag, name of tag, type is just going to be a string, And we need a tag name. I actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll call it name. We could call it title or something like that. I think that this probably makes sense. And this is not a type string. I'm sorry, I was thinking about this here. This is a document. And so what is exciting about this, though, is this will be the first thing that we will be able to access in Sanity directly. And so if we want to paste in here, and this is just I guess a clipboard manager that I have that's just some fun snippets and something like that. It's called paste, I think is what it's called. I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. So document, I lied, it's tag. So we need to export default tag from tag, and then we need to come into our schema and repeat this. This is the last time that we'll have to do this. So don't worry about, this is really all the boilerplate that we have to set up, really. From here, it's going to be pretty much just creating all of the actual types and schema and things like that. This is really the extent of kind of the boilerplatey stuff, which if you ask me, I mean, 24 lines to create all of the schema stuff and concatenation and all of that, including the imports and everything. That's pretty sick. It's a pretty cool function. And so now if we come over, I had the studio running. So let's open it up. We should have access to, wow, I should have known better. So we are missing a lot of things. Let's see. All right, so I figured it out. It was kind of dumb. I screwed up this function here. We can't pass in an array like that. So we are just going to kind of concatenate concatenations. And I've done that before, and I just botched it. So my bad. I also went in and changed these from, I realized in my copy and paste Fury, I had said, values for plugs, which is how we imported. And then I passed in plug as I mapped over it, or plugs, plural, and then referenced it in the return statement. And that didn't really make any sense because we're passing in a singular value into these return statements off of a plural value. So I changed that too, but there's nothing too major there. That's just basic JavaScript stuff, right? And then fixed this function. And with that, we have our tags. Look at that. And so we're able to come in here and give a tag name. And so we'll just say new, publish another one. We'll say hot, nice and spicy. And I think that's really all we want for the moment. I don't know that there's really much else. We actually only need new for now because everything is very new here. But, why not set it up right the first time around? But hey, we have something in Sanity. And over the next couple of minutes here, we'll see a lot of progress really quickly, I think. So let's hop back in. We will call this one good as done. And so now let's come over to the social callout, schema, plugs, social callout. We will skip some of the copy and pasting and deleting that I've been doing, and we'll just off the bat go ahead and do this one from scratch. So we'll have the social callout. The name will be social, you guessed it, callout. This will be of type, and it's going to be an object, if I'm not crazy. And this is going to have an array of fields. So these fields, the first one that we have listed here in Notion is going to have a title of heading, a name of heading, and a type of string. Sick. The next one down is going to have a title. We called it, what do we call it? Social list We'll drop this down. We'll rename it. And then changing case, if VS Code will open up the command palette for me. Guess not. Guess the command palette doesn't work. Social list. Let me just make sure that the screen recording is still running. Hope it didn't pause or something silly. So we'll have a social list. And that social list is going to be, getting ahead of myself, a type of array. It is going to be an array of type of reference to another type called social. All right, so let's break this down a little. So we have a social list in here, and we're going to have an array of references to the type of social. And so inside of that, we haven't created this yet, but we're about to. So we'll go ahead and check this off. We'll check that off. And this document social, this is kind of what I was mentioning earlier. We don't, kind of like with the tags, it kind of feels like overkill a little bit to have documents for these things. But over the course of Coda's lifetime, we plan to have quite a few channels and different platforms and things like that. And so just setting it up so that we can manage all of them and then the information inside of them can grow, right? Like if you can imagine, there will be links, there will be videos, you know, there are certain things we want to access globally from the scope of Coda YouTube, right? And so we want to just create sort of a collection of documents that contain all of that information. And that's one of the things that I actually really, really like about Sanity is their approach to the structured content, right? And so I do a fair amount of headless WordPress development at an agency. And so we'll have a WordPress site with advanced custom fields, and we'll have this great mix of content and presentation. And there's just repeater on top of repeater, where really we should have separate collections of different things to be more portable, right? Because we have some websites that are a bit older and they're really large websites, but they're pretty locked in because the content was not organized and structured in a way that's very portable. And so when you kind of structure everything from the top down this way and then just create references to your larger, broader content bucket, I think it's great. And so now that tangent is done, I guess we'll go ahead and finish this one and wrap up the video. So the title for this one is going to be social. The name will be social, and the type will be of document. And then as always, we will have some fields. The first field is going to have a title of platform name. Name we will say is platform name of type string. Great. Let's just copy that down to save a few keystrokes. Platform name needs to be link. Didn't mean to change you. And that will be of type URL. And so Sanity has a built-in URL, so that's nice. We don't have to do anything there. And so now this document is done. And so if we went ahead into Sanity, we're not going to see it. And that's because we need to jump into our index and we will add an export. So now reload, and now we have our social platforms. And now we could say this platform. And so again, we'll add more to this schema over time, but this is just sort of the basics, right? So like if we were to head over to YouTube and we would just say, I don't know, Coda, Gatsby, Sanity, I think we should come up. Yeah, so if you were to head maybe here and head to our channel, boom, now we have a link. We can drop the platform link and publish. And so we'll have a few more of these added in just for some other social platforms or whatever, and we should be good there. So I think that that's it for this first round of plugs. And so this is a little bit maybe discouraging because after all of that work, all we have to show for it is tags and YouTube. But in the next video, we're going to take all of these different plugs that we just created and we're going to drop them into documents so that we're able to create sort of the actual content management version of this, where we'll have pages and site settings and some of those things. And that's really where all of this work up front is going to pay off a lot, because all we'll need to do is just drop in our array of plugs and bam, we will have a full page builder set up right out of the box from what we did